So in today's web dev tip, we're going to take a look at how we can handle our different environments within our project. So we've obviously got the environment where we're working locally with our code on our computer, but now we've got our production environment. We want to pass in different information when, for instance, we're connecting to our database. So when we're working locally, we want to connect to our local database, and then conversely, when we're in the production mode on the server, we want to connect to the database that's residing there on the server. And I guess you could keep all of the information exactly the same, have the same password locally as you do in your remote server, but for security reasons it's good to separate those. And also for our production environment, we're actually going to supply our database credentials using environment variables on the command line so that we keep all that information out of our code base and it's also kept secret to the users. So luckily NX provides us with some tools to maintain these different environments within our projects. So if we go over to the main.ts file at the moment, you should see that our database connection string is up here somewhere. And you can see it's kind of hard coded into this app. So what we're actually going to do is move this out into these environments files that NX provides. And you can see we've got two set up here already. There's one for our local setup and there's also another one for our production server as well. So that's really handy. We can just use these to switch between the two different environments. So what we're going to do is, instead of taking this string here and having it directly in the main.ts file, I'm going to just copy that, go over to the environments.ts file, and it just basically exports an object that you can use throughout your code base, which we'll see in a second. But we're just going to say create a new property on there, say db connection string, for example, and then just make it equivalent to that string that we've just copied from the main.ts. So we know this works because we've been using it in our project previously. So that'll be our database connection string for our local environment. So if we just go back to the main.ts file, and we'll see how you can use that. So in order to use that environment variable, we just say environment and just import that from the relevant file there. So we've got the environment and we just then access that property that we created, the db connection string, and that will just basically replace the string that we had there previously. So we're doing the same thing as before, except we've just moved the connection string details into that environments file. So the advantage we've got now of doing that is in the environment.prod file, we can then create the same property, the db connection string property, and then this file will actually be used, and therefore the other properties inside of here as well, such as the connection string, that will actually be used when we build our project in our pipeline and is actually then pushed to the server. So then it will be looking for different connection strings and any other properties that you set up, rather than using what we've got set up in our local environment here. So as I say, all we need to do really here is just to say the db connection string, but it's still the same connection string that we're going to be providing here. But as I said at the start of this tutorial, we don't really want to put that information into our code base. Even if you've got a private Git repository, you don't really want to be sharing those kind of credentials. It's best to keep those private. So what we can do, instead of using the actual string for our database connection here, what we can do is reference an environment variable, which we can pass in on the command line when we actually get the Node service up and running remotely. So we can do that in Node by saying process, and then we just say environment, or env for short. And then this is an object which references all of the environment variables that are running on the particular terminal that started the process. So we'll just create one called db connection string. I like to put them all in uppercase, although there's no requirement to do that. You can have them any format you like. And as I say, when this builds in a production mode, as it does in our GitHub pipeline, the connection string that's being used within our app will be whatever's been provided on the terminal when the process is set up and run on the DigitalOcean droplet. So we'd do that in some way like this. So we'd say export an environment variable in some fashion like this, and we'll just say it's 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And then when we're on our terminal, we have that available to us, as long as you use the dollar prefix just before that. So whatever we put into this database connection string will be available to us to use in this process.env special variable here. So this will become a bit clearer when we get our Node service up and running in the next tutorial. But in this tutorial, we've just set up our environment and we've got our production build to actually use a command line environment variable, and we're going to use that in the next tutorial. But that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.